Hi, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to sort of pull back the curtain and give you a peek into the way that I cook a lot at home. I'm going to be making a dish called Arroz a la Tumbada, kind of a rice dish, rice and seafood dish on the fly. And that may sound like something you would only do for company, but I'm going to show you really how I would do it if I was just cooking for me and my wife, okay? So number one, it's really relying on a lot of pantry items that I have in my house pretty much at all times. This is a rice dish, but it takes cooked rice to start with. So every time I make rice, whether I'm doing it on the stovetop or in a rice cooker, I always make extra. And then I put some of it into the freezer so that I can have it there to make a dish like this or to make fried rice, which I love to make too. So I've always got my rice on hand. Now the flavoring for this, usually I would go through how to make this base of tomatoes and green chilies and so forth, but honestly, you can make it with a jar of salsa. Now this is a shameless plug for a brand called Frontera, which is my brand, and you can find it coast to coast, but I'm going to tell you why I think this is the best choice for you to use for making this dish. Our salsa doesn't have a lot of vinegar in it. A lot of salsas are just jam-packed with vinegar, and that might mar the dish, or it might not, depending on what your taste is like. But any kind of a tomato salsa will work for this. We're not talking chopped tomato salsa here. We're talking about one that is the consistency of what you would find in a jar. If you make your salsa, then you'll make something like a roasted tomato salsa or a boiled tomato salsa with green chili in it, like what I would often show you done in a mortar, where you crush everything together in a mortar. So this is going to be our flavoring. Salsa is going to be our flavoring. We've got rice that's already cooked. Now, what about seafood? You could make this with any kind of seafood you want. I always keep frozen shrimp in my freezer, so you could make it just with shrimp. I oftentimes have fillets that are frozen in my freezer as well, so I would pull out maybe a few shrimp and some fish. But if I really want to make this delicious, I'll stop by the store on my way home and I will buy either mussels or clams to do this. The only reason is that when they open up, they release a lot of goodness into this finished dish, and they really do make a difference. Do you have to have them? No. You could just do it maybe when the company's going to come over, because this pantry dish is actually good enough for company. So just think, I'm going to make 2 servings of it. Just think that if you have about something like 10 or 12 ounces of fish or shrimp and a handful of mussels or some clams, you'll have enough to do this with. It's basically very fast to put together. Oh, I didn't talk about the broth that I'm going to use too, because you do need to have some kind of broth, but probably you, like I, always have one of these kind of UHT containers of broth on my pantry shelf as well. Now, I'm going to use this bone broth, but do you know the difference between broth and bone broth and stock? I'm going to just make it really simple for you, okay? Usually when it's called broth, it's made with vegetables and meat. When it's called stock, it's usually made with vegetables and bones. If it's bone broth, it's stock. Okay, so I know we've been hearing a lot about bone broth lately. Maybe that ship has sort of sailed already, but I don't know if you were confused about it, because I had to go up and look up definitions of things. But just so that you know that it's more about meat if it's called broth, and it's more about bones and the richness that they add to everything if it's called stock. Stock is usually going to give you a bigger, richer flavor. Okay, putting this dish together goes very fast. I'm going to just skim the bottom of this pot here with a little bit of oil, vegetable oil or olive oil, whichever. I love olive oil in this dish, so if you have it, I would say use it. And then I'm going to put the salsa in here. I've had this heating over a lower temperature for a while here, so that the whole pan is hot. So I'm going to put this, about half a jar of salsa. This is typically a green chili dish, so you don't choose like a chipotle salsa for this, although it would be delicious. So if that's what you have on hand, just use it. I'm turning up the temperature a little bit. I'm going to cook this and stir it for a few minutes until it's just noticeably thicker. For 2 servings of this, I'm using half a jar of salsa, or about a cupful of salsa. Okay, this has thickened up nicely. So it's the moment to add the broth to it and bring it to a boil. So I'm going to put a couple of cups of this broth in there. Use whatever you have, but this bone broth will obviously make it very lovely and rich. And we'll let that come to a simmer. Okay, as this is coming now to a full simmer, I like to add an herb to it. Traditionally, in the state of Veracruz, where Arroz a la Tumbada is from, they will use epazote. Now, it's not probably going to be something that everybody has, this beautiful sort of sawtooth-shaped leaf herb here, but I've got it because we use it for making black beans and different moles and such at work, so I can always reach in and grab some to show you. But maybe like at home I don't always have it, but I always do have cilantro in my refrigerator, so a big handful of cilantro going in here would be good. Or these leaves, I'm just going to tear them up. Again, this is very sort of imprecise cooking in a way. And when it comes to the full boil, if you have mussels or clams to add to this, then just drop those guys in now. And we're going to cover the pot and let that cook for about 3 or 4 minutes until they begin to open up. Let's check these clams. Okay, so you can see that most of them have opened up here. So now is the moment to add the shrimp and the fish. So just slide that. The fish typically would be a fillet, a skinless fillet that you cut into about 1/2-inch pieces. So just nestle all of those down. We're cooking now over about a medium heat. That works really well for this. Put the top on it, and we're going to let those cook for just a couple minutes more. I don't like the fish or the shrimp to be too done, so we'll come back to it just in about 2 minutes. Time to give it a taste. Remember that we're working with a slightly salted broth and a salted salsa. So it's almost there. I'm just going to sprinkle just a little bit of salt over the top of it. This is so good. This is a kind of quick meal that I always look forward to. This is typically made with rice that is already cooked, so it's perfect for using some of my frozen rice in. Just mix that in there like that. And you are ready to serve. I'm going to transfer it over here. I actually like to serve this in this vessel on the table because it's so pretty, and it just looks like something you want to dig into. So this is a very quick version of Arroz a la Tumbada, with or without the traditional epazote. Maybe you want to sprinkle a little bit more cilantro over the top if that's what you have. But I always recommend serving it with limes on the side, so that you can perk up the broth in the way that people in Mexico really love when they're having something brothy like this. Arroz a la Tumbada on the fly.